Join us now as we explore the Catskills from the foothills to the high country and both sides of the Delaware River, meeting amazing people here on Catskill Character.
Welcome to Catskill Character. I'm your host, Donna Fellenberg. My guest today is probably not considered predictable. She was raised by a hippie mother and traveled all over the U.S. with her until her mother would marry, and they would live for a while in a new place until her mother would get the urge for going, and they'd pick up and move to another town or state or stepfather. There were lots of adventures. My guest became, among other things, an expert in tarot cards, an actress starring in B-movie horror films, playing werewolves and vampires. She's also a writer, a teacher, and a lecturer, traveling all over the world spreading the word of tarot. She also has her own cooking show, a podcast called The Enchanted Kitchen. And that's just skimming the surface of Coshecton, New York's own Sasha Graham, my guest today on Catskill Character. Sasha, welcome to Catskill Character.
Thank you for having me.
You really led a peripatetic life as a child growing up. How do you think that informed the person that you are today?
I think that my childhood, which took place across the country, my mom was this hippie who took me, to over 27 different homes, living in wild places, farms, Iowa, Colorado, Pennsylvania. I think it opened up my eyes to the broad experience of nature and to the beauty of the natural world. As a child, it also taught me to become extremely adaptable. I was always the new kid at school, so always like making friends. So it taught me how to quickly assess a room and kind of fit into any situation. It also taught me, I think, that I needed to be grounded in a place that I loved that would one day be my own, which I've done.
Well, you have to admit it could have gone a lot of different ways, but you became so resilient and I think very strong as a result of that.
Thank you. I mean, it was always very interesting at the same time as well, right? And that idea of newness kind of unfolding around you was scary, but it was exciting to move and find, yourself in a new place every 6 months, every year, every few years. So yeah, as a child, it's unsettling. But as an adult, now that's something that certainly, although I'm settled and secure, I do crave travel and adventure.
And we are going to talk about that.
Yes.
And we're also going to talk about tarot because you are an expert with tarot cards and you go all over the world teaching and lecturing. I was wondering if you could differentiate between tarot and what my audience and frankly me, I might associate with psychics, clairvoyance. There's a big difference, right?
There is. Tarot, it's an interesting thing. And the idea of psychics, right? It's a very loaded word. People bring a lot to the table when it comes to psychics and intuitives and tarot cards. So quite succinctly, tarot cards are just a deck of cards. And they have a history of being used for divination, that is, for fortune telling. But they can also be used for self-examination, right? For empowerment. You can use them as a way to understand who it is that you are. And so that's the way that I use the cards. And that's how I teach that the cards can be used. Not so much to peek into your future, but to take a look at exactly who it is that you are, why you do the things that you do, where you kind of line up in the patterns of your life. And they're an excellent way to kind of move into the invisible world, the sacred imagination, kind of pierce the veils. So tarot cards can be used for a number of things, but I think in a modern tarot card practice, you'll find more people using them in an exploratory and self-examination way. And that's certainly the way I write about the cards, teach the cards, and read the cards.
But what about you? Do you think that doing all of this with tarot has been kind of like a therapy for you?
100%. Absolutely. Reading tarot is no different than painting a painting, acting in a scene, writing a poem, because you're sitting there and you're working with a device, but you're also opening up yourself to this kind of inspiration. Right? And you're seeing what appears before you. So not only does it help me evolve as a human, it also helps me kind of clear my mind understand where I am on any given day and kind of give me a lens and a context with which to make good choices and decisions for myself. And hopefully that's what I'm teaching other people to do with the cards as well.
How did you first stumble upon tarot? I mean, I've been on this planet a long time. I've never even seen a deck of tarot cards. So how did it start for you?
Well, I'm a Halloween baby. So I just kind of grew up with this assumption that I was like a witch, a goblin, a ghoul. I figured it was just my automatic birthright to be able to read tarot cards. I feel like I always knew what they were, and I was always fascinated by them. The funny thing is we are all kind of witches and goblins and ghouls. We are born into this temporary body from this void that we will return to one day. So it's not just that I'm a supernatural creature, right? It's that we're all supernatural creatures. And the tarot gives us a great way to dip into that.
Were you doing tarot or starting to do tarot around the same time that you became an actress?
Oh, no. Actually, tarot completely predates probably even my desire to be a professional actor. I got my first tarot deck when I was 12 years old.
Oh, okay.
To read cards at like a carnival at school. So that was my first deck. And then I was a B-movie actress in the 90s. And probably toward the end of the 90s, I delved deeply back into tarot just for fun, not realizing it would eventually become my profession, not realizing it would eventually become something that I would write and lecture on.
So we're not just talking about B movies, we're talking about B horror movies.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Well, you already said you thought you were like a goblin. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. Well,
it's like coming home.
It was phenomenal, right? It was fantastic. Like, and again, growing up, I lived on mountains or living on farms. I was always kind of in rural areas and often alone as a child. Often, I was by myself. And so the world did feel very supernatural to me. And then I loved making horror movies, and I loved playing vampires and werewolves and aliens. 9 times out of 10, the characters that I played in these films were very strong and very powerful. And that's what attracted me to vampires to begin with. Strong, beautiful, in control, in a way that I wasn't strong, or I did not feel strong when I was a child. So again, this idea that there is some power in supernatural power, right, in these invisible worlds. So it was phenomenal. And as an actor, it was also crazy fun. Like, I wasn't just playing somebody's girlfriend. I was a killer. And then I would eventually get like a great death scene if my, character did meet its demise. So it was so fun. Horror movies are so much fun, right? Because it's super heightened reality in every sense of the word.
And I understand that you still have quite a cult following.
I do. Yeah. I mean, it's a super niche, but it definitely still exists. And some of my movies are streaming right now on Amazon Prime.
Well, what's a couple of the names?
One of them you can catch now is Polymorph, an alien movie by J.R. Bookwalter, is streaming right now on Amazon. We just pulled it up at a party I was at recently.
Polymorph?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to check it out. Did you meet your husband while you were on set?
I did meet my husband on set, although it wasn't the set of a horror movie. It was the set of a commercial. I think it was we always argue. He says it was the New York Daily News. I say it was a commercial for the New York Times. But yeah, we were shooting in Madison Square Garden, and he was a production assistant, and he was overworked and underpaid and sweaty and sexy. And I looked across the floor of the garden and I saw him, and I was like, hello.
Did you give him that vampire look?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. That's so funny. I know exactly what you mean when you say that vampire look. Yes. And it's, I recently, at the very end of last year, I shot, for the first time in 20 years, I was back on set. I shot a short film and a cameo. And it was so funny how quickly I slipped right back into that kind of, I was throwing the vampire. I caught myself throwing the vampire gazes, right?
Once a vampire, always a vampire.
That's right. That's right.
So your husband is a food stylist and photographer, correct?
Yeah. He's a food photographer. So he went from being a production assistant to becoming, one of the premier food photographers in New York City, which is great because you never know what he's going to bring home for dinner. It always makes for interesting cooking.
Gee, I never thought of that.
Oh, it's fabulous.
That's great. But he also came up with the idea for your cooking show.
Mm-hmm. He did. So he was moving into video, and he said, Sash, wouldn't it be this great idea if we took your tarot and magical work and like applied it to the kitchen? Right. So we created the Enchanted Kitchen, which is a mindful cooking show inspired by tarot cards. And it also throws in, very practical kitchen magic.
There's a lot of kitchen shows, a lot of cooking shows on TV.
Yes.
But there is nothing like that.
No.
That is so great. And it was your husband. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, he does all the filming. What's it like working with him?
Excruciating. It's horrible.
It's a pleasure and pain.
I think working in such close proximity with your spouse, I'm not the only one. I have other friends who've experienced this as well. You bring the best and the worst out of each other in such intense circumstances, and me being in front of the camera and him, being the director telling me what to do. All right, can you imagine? Like we clash unbearably. But at the end of the day, I think the product that comes out.
The product is beautiful, yeah.
Is good. And again, it's like therapy for the marriage, right? Because it brings up all of our issues front and center, and it's there on video, like to refer back to.
Right.
So
can't deny it.
You can't deny it. He'll call me back. He'll call me out on something I said or did, and see, you're doing it. It's horrifying, but it's great.
Before we take a break, I want to just ask you one more question.
Yes.
I know that the two of you have a daughter.
We do.
And I was wondering how your childhood informed the way you parent.
Being a child of the 70s and a child of divorce, and often finding myself in circumstances where it felt as if I was the adult, not the adults in the room, I really parent now in the way that I wish I had been parented, if that makes any sense. And I think a lot of us do that. And, it was the 70s. A lot of parents weren't paying attention to what their kids were doing. People were just trying to make ends meet and get dinner on the table. And I think a lot of us were left to our own devices, which is, of course, what's given way to the helicopter parenting and the snowplow parenting that's happening now, even in so much as the whole college scandal admissions things, like the extent that people will go to make sure that their children are successful. I just don't think that existed in a large way in the 70s. So yeah, it was directly relational to how I raised my daughter. And also, parenting is the most challenging thing in the world. We were talking about that earlier.
It's painful. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all of those things. And it comes along with so many pleasures, though, that I didn't expect. Again, working with tarot, when you call something into your life that you want, and I couldn't wait to be a mom. I couldn't wait to be a New York City mom, right? I couldn't wait to raise my daughter and give her the New York City childhood that I dreamt of. Because I was like a kid playing on a pig farm. I wanted to be having tea at the plaza. So when I became a mom, I would take my daughter for tea at the plaza, in the Museum of Natural History. And all of these wonderful cultural things.
No one on the face of the earth knows better about what a good parent needs to be than a child that maybe didn't get all of the things that he or she needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they can then bring that to their experience of being a parent. Or not.
Or not. I mean, hopefully if you're introspective and self-aware enough.
Exactly. You need those two things.
You do. And, and it's a funny thing because you look at, and this is something that I talk about with the tarot all of the time, the challenges, right? The scary cards. Those are the places where we grow. This is what makes us good.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the tarot because we're going to take a break now. But afterwards, I'd love it if you'd crack out those cards and we'll just talk about it a little bit more, okay?
You got it, Donna.
This is Catskill Character. I'm your host, Donna Fellenberg, and today my guest is writer, actress, tarot expert, and so much more, Sasha Graham. We'll be right back.
Memorial Day is a day to stop and remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country.
Your presence here today and that of the people gathering all across America is a tribute to those lost troops and to their families.
Voices from the 2018 Sullivan County Memorial Day service and wreath laying. This year's service takes place Monday afternoon at 1 at the Sullivan County Veterans Cemetery. WJFF will be there to record it and will present the service on air that evening at 6 in place of Fresh Air here on WJFF.
If you've just joined us, this is Catskill Character on WJFF Radio Catskill with me, Donna Fellenberg, and my guest, Sasha Graham. In the first part of the show, Sasha told us about her not-so-traditional upbringing and how it impacted her in many ways. She talked about the various things she's done in her life, including becoming a horror film actress, starring in over 15 horror films back in the 90s. In the next part of the show, Sasha will talk a bit more about tarot cards and share some insights she's had over the years traveling and spreading the word about tarot everywhere she goes. Sasha, I see you did bring your cards.
I did.
If you were sitting here with me and I was one of your clients, you would crack out the cards. What would be the first thing that you would do?
Well, my favorite thing to do is to teach people how to use tarot for themselves. So the first thing I would suggest to you is that if you wanted to start using the tarot, to just pull a single card every day. Maybe in the morning, maybe with your coffee, with your tea, just to take 5 minutes to kind of clear your head, clear your mind, ground yourself in your body and say, okay, what do I need to know today? The meat and bones of tarot are the questions that we ask. And when we ask really good questions, we're tricking our brain into thinking better for ourselves. So there's so much power in just 3 to 5 minutes of groundedness and saying, what do I need to know? What do I need to know today? So I would say, make yourself comfortable, do that, and we'll do a little shuffle. And then reading tarot is so super easy. You don't have to know anything about what the cards actually mean because tarot works on a symbolic level, and we read things symbolically all the time. So I'd say let's flip a card, and I'm going to do this for you right now. And for anybody listening, this is something that maybe they could pay attention to today, something they need to know today. And it's the 5 of Swords, which is the card of communication.
Get out of here. Really?
And here we are sitting in a radio station, right?
That is so wild.
So swords are elemental air, and air is representative of our mind, our thoughts, our articulation, our calculations, stories, the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories we tell other people. And the lesson of this card is to be kind with your words. And remember, the image of a sword on tarot, the sword can be a weapon or it can be something that is protective, right? And the same thing is true of our language, of the way we express ourselves, the way we speak to other people. So if this was your card of the day, and I'll take it as, we can look at it as our card of the day, communicate clearly and kindly.
I think I'm going to get a pack of tarot cards.
I should have brought you a deck. I'll come back with one for you.
But that's great. I really like it. Let's talk for a moment about, and thank you so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
About some of those places you've been lecturing and teaching tarot.
Yes.
When I went on your website, I read one of your blogs and found out that you've traveled to base camp of Mount Everest. Hello. I think you're the first person I've ever met and probably will ever meet that's done that.
Oh, well, who knows? Maybe you'll go yourself someday. Who knows?
I don't think it's in the cards.
I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out. Leave it open. I was at Mount Everest Base Camp on the Tibet side last October, and it was the entire journey in Tibet, culminating with my trip to Everest, was one of the greatest experiences I may ever have. It was extraordinary.
And you told me that there's a great difference between the Nepal base camp and the one that you find in Tibet.
Yeah, I believe so. I was not in the Nepal base camp, so I can only speak from what I've heard. But, Tibet is occupied by the Chinese government. The Chinese government has, they've clamped down the control. For a female traveler, for myself traveling alone, it meant that I was safe, but it also meant that I had to be with a group. It meant that I had to have the proper traveling papers. It meant that there were checkpoints everywhere at every stop. Tibetan people are not even allowed to leave the country. So it was very much the feeling of being in an occupied country, but at the same time, as a female traveler, for me, it was safe. But the beauty of all of it was being at the highest point of the world. And I kept saying, I'm at the crown chakra of the world, and it's full. The monasteries and the people and the nomads and the food and the sunlight. I mean, looking at the Himalayas, you understand the artwork, the Tibetan artwork, right? And the Bodhisattvas, like they literally, the clouds look like they are these monstrous demon gods, like coming at you when you're like, moving towards a snowstorm. Like you've never seen anything like it in your life. And the people, the Tibetan people, are so grounded and so present and so kind and so curious and so playful that I was just...
There are no words.
There's no words. There's no words.
Well, thank you for that. When I look at you, you're very smiling, you're very open, but you're a very deep person. And this was brought home to me when I was looking at your website and I was reading some of your blogs. Mm-hmm. And I picked up this quote, and I want the audience to hear it because I think it's so important. I get that heart opening hurts. You have to crack your heart wide open to let more of anything in. That's why even extreme beauty and compassion is painful. It's transforming you. And evolution is never comfortable, or we wouldn't fight it so hard. But meaningful things in life never come easy, do they? It doesn't mean life has to be tough, but it does mean you have to be willing to sit with discomfort, especially the squirmy, scary kind that marks extreme transformation and heart opening. I was a psychoanalyst for many years, and I said that's at the heart of what I did as an analyst, is to help people get to that spot, that place of vulnerability, by asking questions, the right questions at the right time, and helping them get there and not be afraid to look at themselves, and hence not be afraid to look at others in the world around us. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really beautiful and very, very meaningful. And I wanted to ask you about heart opening. Mm. Tell us a little bit about how you conceptualize what heart opening is.
Well, I think that we are all here to evolve, right? We're all here on our journey in this life to be more of who we are. And this idea that, and not only for myself, but for anyone who's ever come to a tarot reading, how can your hope and your fear be the same thing? If you want something, why is it so hard to get to that? And why do these sometimes insurmountable challenges feel like they're standing in front of us? And why is something that's so obvious, like peace or love or kindness or compassion, why can that be such a hard place for us not only to give to ourselves, but to give to other people? It has to be scary, and it has to crack us open, or else we wouldn't keep moving forward. I recently taught a class, and one of the spreads was turning your greatest challenge into your greatest ally. And they are. It's two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. So this idea of breaking yourself open in order to transform yourself, and it can come from extreme pain, and it can come from extreme beauty, but we can always love more, but it hurts. It hurts. Mm-hmm. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. And most people shy away from the discomfort. So the trick is to sit with it. It's something that you learn in yoga. How do you get bendier? How do you get stretchier? It doesn't necessarily feel good to stretch out your body, but you sit with the discomfort and you move with it, and you become more pliable, and you become more open, and you become more of who it is that you are. And that's the reason that we're here.
And that also speaks to what we were talking about earlier. To be a parent is to have to be able to face those squirmy parts of yourself where you don't know what you're doing. No. And you feel so much discomfort. And
it's impossible to be a perfect parent.
No.
You are going to fail. You are going to fail. We're all going to fail in our lives in certain respects, and there's no way that you're not going to fail as a parent. And that there aren't many relationships, right, that you so want to succeed at as you do as wanting to be a parent. So know that you're kind of like screwed from the beginning, and that you still, do the best that you can. And isn't that the great metaphor for our lives? We're never going to be perfect, and we're going to mess up, but there is the opportunity for transcendence, right? There is the opportunity to move past those who've come before you and to do something new and to do something better and to do something more vast. Again, that idea of heart opening, not only with ourselves, but with the people that we love the most. So even when we're sitting in a place of discomfort with them, letting them be who they are.
And you can be discomforted, but not have to yell and scream, not have to fight.
Well, this brings us back actually to tarot. You know, the magician card, the number one card, the first, like numbered one, is the magician. And he has all 4 suits of tarot on his table. And what that represents is thoughts, emotions, the material world, and our passion. And so he has all of those things in front of him, yet that's not where he reacts from. It's this idea of moving back to the active awareness. It's the idea of sitting with whatever is in front of you without reacting out of anger or fear or passion or desire, so that you can react out of an authentic place of who it is that you are. If we could do that in any situation, I think we'd bring everything forward in our life.
I think it would be a different world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sasha Graham, thank you so much for coming in today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here and hearing all this. And I want to ask you to tell the audience, I'm not really sure when this is going to air, but let's talk about some of the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So I've got a slew of tarot books out. I'm the author of a book called Tarot Diva, 365 Tarot Spreads, 365 Tarot Spells, Llewellyn's Complete Book of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. So if you're interested, pop onto Amazon. You can Google me and find my books. I also have a new tarot deck out this year, the Haunted House Tarot, and one coming out in 2020 called the Dark Wood, which is a shadow tarot deck. It's looking at the darker side of the psyche that we don't always want to peer into, but which is, of course, is a place of great growth. I also teach tarot classes at River Family Wellness in Callicoon, New York on a rotating basis. So you can check River Family Wellness's website to see when I have tarot workshops scheduled, and you can just drop in for one or you can sign up for all of them. I teach tarot and yoga at the Kripalu Institute for Yoga and Health in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. I'll be there with my co-teacher, I think twice next year. And I've got season 2 of the Enchanted Kitchen will be hopefully online this summer.
If someone wants to find out about any or all of those things, they can go to sashagraham.com and find out what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. sashagraham.com, or you can follow me on social media. I'm very active on Instagram, Sasha Tarot Diva on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well.
Okay. Thanks again, Sasha.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Sasha Graham, folks, and that's it for today. I have to admit, I'm blown away by this discussion, and I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Tune in every Saturday for more Catskill Character right after Farming Country at 11:30 here on WJFF Radio Catskill. I'm Donna Fellenberg. Thanks so much for listening.
Support comes from the Callicoon Theater, an updated vintage movie theater with new releases, film festivals, nostalgic screenings, live music events, and more. Information and schedule at www.thecallicoontheater.com.
It's the 13th annual Maritime Life Celebration Concert, featuring an evening with Bill Staines. Saturday, June 8th, at the Eddie Adams Barn, located at 247 Jeffersonville North Branch Road, Jeffersonville, New York. Shows at 7:30. Suggested donation $15. No one turned away. Information at WJFFradio.org. All proceeds benefit WJFF.
WJFF.
FF.
WJFF.
FF.
WJFF.
FF.
WJ